Selamat datang and welcome to the virtual colloquium by Institute of Teacher Education International Languages Campus, IPG KBA, with the theme Humanizing Teaching and Learning, the Dynamics of Language Education in the Waves of Global Change. I, Selvanayagi Shanmugam, your moderator, and I'm also a lecturer with IPG KBA and will be hosting this interesting session today. Welcome, selamat datang again to the 6th session of our virtual colloquium. And I hope you will stay tuned till the end of the session. Before we get to the session, as usual, let me lay out a few housekeeping matters. First, your registration. Please register yourself in the link provided above. We will be sending your e-certificate based on the email address you provide. Please ensure that you key in your correct email address. Second, we love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have any questions for our speaker, please feel free to send it through the chat box. The speaker will be answering questions at the end of the session. And lastly, we would like to encourage you to share today's webinar with your social networks. Now, let me introduce our speaker for today. Our speaker for today will be Miss Danila Wolfe. She has been teaching in Berlin as a high school teacher of English, German, and drama. Prior to coming to Malaysia, she was a head teacher and instructor for integration class, developing curriculum, and teaching German for young students. She started her career as educational expert and head of educational services with Goethe Institute Malaysia. She has worked with Ministry of Education Malaysia in promoting German language in secondary schools all over the Malaysia. Okay, at present, we have around 80 schools in Malaysia teaching German. Her areas of expertise are teaching, developing curriculum, independent learning, and intercultural pedagogy. With this, let me welcome Ms. Danila. Her topic is initiating students' activity by engaging individual learning. Ms. Danila, welcome, and the stage is yours now.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and guten Morgen and good morning to everyone listening. I'm going to share my screen, and as Dr. Sheva has said, I'm looking forward to answer all your questions later, so feel free to collect whatever comes up, whatever you would like to talk about later. I'm going to share my screen now. I hope you can all see. So as Dr. Sheva said, my topic today is initiating student activity by engaging individual learning as part of humanizing teaching and learning. My name is Danila Wolfe, and I'm from the Goethe Institute Malaysia. As Dr. Sheva has said, I'm the educational expert at Goethe Institute Malaysia. That means that I'm not a teacher there, but I was actually chosen by the German government to come to Malaysia as a teacher for German, English, and drama with my 12 years of teaching experience there, to be posted in Kuala Lumpur to support the local school teachers here with my knowledge, with my expertise, to work together and to improve the teaching methods, but also the lessons itself. And how is that done? I'm going to share a screen with you that shows one of our slides that we use for our social media presence when we communicate, when we stay in contact with our schools, with the teachers and the students on Instagram and Facebook. So this is one of the slides that we prepared, asking, for example, questions like, did you know that Malaysian students can choose to learn German as a foreign language in about 80 schools all over Malaysia? And those 80 schools are actually as well a task of the Goethe-Institut, which is the German Culture and Language Institute, a bit like the British Council and the Institut Français. And our task is not only to provide language classes as a private language institution, but also to support, as I said, the local schools with teacher trainings, educational projects, school supplies, any expertise that we can have to promote the German language in any possible way. Um, and with this, yeah, I would like to talk today about something that I have learned in my 12 years of teaching in my school, because the topic that I've chosen is something that I was actually working with for the last 12 years. So I'm really happy and thankful, grateful that I can talk about this today. A very old look onto what school look like, or a very old approach, is to think that school is that the same students solve the same tasks with the same teacher in the same room at the same time, at the same pace, with the same result. Some schools still work like this. Some schools have worked like this years ago, but teaching methods like this will leave some students clueless and demotivated. And of course, as you can see on the side, because not one size fits all, we have to make some changes, because all the students that we teach are different learners. They are all differently. They do not only look differently, but what they bring into the classroom is very different, because these young people that we can see in front of us will be found with very different inclination, interests, abilities, who do not achieve the same learning results in the same way. And if the teachers want to support these students in the best possible way, they have to perceive them as a very heterogeneous, a very diverse group, and offer them individualized learning opportunities. So this is what we're going to talk about today: how these individualized opportunities, learning opportunities, can look like, and in this way enable the students to achieve better learning results, more motivating learning results, gain competence, courage, and personality, because differentiated teaching concepts do more justice to the individual, are more human in this way. So, how to deal with a very diverse group of students, teachers and learners alike are challenged to change their routines of teaching and learning. It's not only about one teacher entering the language classroom, asking the students to open the language book and to finish the same task in the same time, and so on and so on. It's about a change that has to be fulfilled, that has to happen. And this individualized learning approach takes into account the diversity of the students in a learning group in order to enable all learners to make the best progress. And all learners includes, of course, the high achieving students that ask for extra tasks, the students that struggle, that need some extra support, students with health difficulties, students that have difficulties joining classrooms in COVID times. So especially in times like these, it's important to keep the individual learner in sight, so we can, pay tribute to all of those kids, so we don't lose some of them behind. So individualized learning, in a way, is the consideration of students' learnings levels. Of course, we have to keep in mind how the learning level is. I cannot use the same material for an 8-year-old language learner, the same like a 16-year-old language learner. I have to adjust that. I have to keep that in mind. Of course, the performance, the interests, the aptitudes, the personalities. And how could that be done? Of course, this could also include a different task and learning materials. So I could offer a different worksheet, for example, for different students, different books, and different materials that I can bring to the classroom. But most importantly, it's also about encouraging students to reflect on their own learning, language learning, work progress, and take responsibility for their own learning. And in this way, um, taking them into the whole progress of learning, making them more responsible, because um, individualization means that learners themselves, they are seen as the best experts because they have a good feeling of what they can achieve, what they feel unsure about, what they would like to learn, what their interest is. And this means that pupils really should be, yeah, take responsibility for their own learning because they are the ones knowing best about themselves. And of course, this should be done bit by bit. They should learn how to do it from a very early age on and get more responsibility with the time. This cannot be given to them and the teacher leaves the room again. But of course, this is a progress that needs to be initiated very early to get them involved in their own learning and to, yeah, to make them responsible. So, how can individualized learning be done? There are different changes or adjustments. So, for example, systematic impulses, the reduction of a group size, a learning group, or the increase of the numbers of teachers that can be sent into a group to, of course, make the teacher student interaction bigger, to give the students the chance to have a learning guide next to them. If you have a group in front of you with 30 students and just one teacher, of course it's very hard for this one teacher to adjust the learning to all 30 students in front of him. And this is one way to pay credit to that. Like I said, material impulses, provision of individual tailored materials, but also changing the way that you teach by opening lessons, engaging independent learning and skill orientation. And what I will show you now is I'm going to give you some examples of how lessons can be adjusted. And I will give you some examples from my own teaching, and I will explain a bit more how individualized learning can look like. Before that, I would like to show you a screenshot of a teacher training that I did in Germany, taking into account all these criteria that individualized tasks should have. So, of course, not many of you might be able to translate the German words. That's why I translated below. These individualized tasks should consider the curiosity of the children. Of course, they should ask them to be curious, to find out things themselves. It should trigger some intrinsic motivation. It's not only about the teacher asking them to do the task, they should get a task that they really want to do. Tasks should be creative, or ask the students to be creative. They should ask for some kind of flexibility in the students. The task should be important. They should have some kind of relevance in the year 2021. Maybe the context that the task is given is somehow related to nowadays. Of course, it should consider different learning strategies that the students can choose from. It should take into account individual initiatives, so the students deciding themselves how to approach things, how to start. Cooperation in some way, so maybe let the students ask or let them choose who to work with, find their own working groups, and interdisciplinary, because it's not only about language learning. When it comes to writing a text in German as a foreign language, in English as a foreign language, but you can also find a teacher from other subjects and work together and find a good task to join those forces. And how this can be done, I will show you in a bit. Um, this is an example of how a lesson, a project, a whole unit can look like. So there's always, with individualized learning, this is German, of course, but don't be afraid. I will point out the most relevant parts for you here. You can see the arrows and the stars. So there's always an input given in the beginning, some kind of lead in, some kind of activation of previous knowledge, some kind of activation of a problem, the questions, goals that are written down in the whole class with everyone, and then talking about what the actual task is, what the project is about, and what the possibilities are that the students can choose from. And secondly, the working phase. And of course, here you can have the whole group working, you can have individual groups, you can have individual learners working, you can have open lessons, you can have projects, you can have individual learning, you can have mixed group, some kind of individualized learning in this part of working phase. And at the end, there's a phase where everything comes together, where there's some kind of feedback given, where students present their own results to others. So it makes it round as a whole teaching unit. And now I would like to come to some of the examples, all from my own teaching experience in Berlin. I've chosen a mix of German and English examples so you can follow or you understand the idea of how these tasks are created. Some are tasks that you can see, some are students' text or results, and I will explain a bit how these student projects show or how they are an example of individualized learning. What you see here is a love letter to a body part written by I would say, a 7, no, maybe 8-year-old student. And he has written, I will just translate that for you. He has written, "Dear tongue, thank you so much for helping me to speak and to taste. Without you, I could never have tried all the delicious dishes that other people have cooked for me. I think you're the best organ in the world, and I'm so happy to have you. Yours, Emil." So the task that the students were given was to choose a body part that we have talked about or that the biology teacher has talked about with them before, and to write a letter, a formalized text, and to create this text as yeah, love letterish as they can. And this, you can see, it was a very young learner. And by letting them choose which body part they could write this specific text to, it created some kind of curiosity. It had some interdisciplinarity combined with the biology lesson. And of course, it triggered some creativity, that there were so many very lovely love letters to organs or to body parts that came out. So as you can see, individualization does not mean that all the tasks need to be open from day one, but you can open it. It's like a little switch that you can adjust. So for example, you can open task a little bit like you do, I'm sure, giving the students a choice in this way, the choice of the body part they write to, but adjusting it more and more, the more the student gains experience with it. And I will show you more examples. So this is the love letter to a body part. The next example that I'm showing you is a task that is related to reading a youth book called The Terrible Two. I think many of you may know it. In my English lesson, English as a foreign language, and the students were reading the same book at the same time. So all of them, I chose the book for them. They were all reading it, but this task asked them to do something creative, to write their own school prank, because the book talks about two school pranksters coming into a certain competition. And they had to write a text about their own school prank that they would like to play, choose a name for the prank, and describe everything around it that is relevant to that prank. And what you see is not only a task that asks them to be creative, be open about the words, so they can choose however length there is between 150 and 200 words. But it also gives them two more things that I would like to focus your attention on. So what you can see here is the language scaffold that they can choose to use. So for language learning, of course, you can give some sentence starters, and the student will choose the language scaffold that he needs for his learning, for his text, and will just leave out the others. And in this way, is there is an individualization and individual learning possible, because of course he's the expert. He knows which expressions he would like to put in, which expressions he might not know. And then there's an add-on whenever the students have finished, or whenever there's some extra time, to add a drawing to that prank, and then give, yeah, some tribute to a person that is highly motivated to add something on that. Slightly older students of this for this task, the prank task, the creative task with the language scaffold. The next one, again, was a very young learner or very young learners. And what I did here is I asked them to create their own dream school. And as you can see, this student did not only draw a house and give some information, like regular information that you would expect, but this kid went beyond what was expected, because the students were able to choose between presenting their dream school in a text, in a written text, as a picture, in an audio file, whatever they would like to do. And what happened was that the students were just so motivated to really be asked for their individual opinion what school should like, that they even paid attention to very tiny details. So as you can see, there's a school with an amusement park, a teleporter for class trips, but you can also see the toilets at the top, the teaching room, technical room, by the library. There's a zoo in the school. There are rooms. There's a swimming pool in the schoolhouse, and the gymnasium downstairs. So if students are asked to choose their own individual approach, not only when it comes to the format they present the task in, but also the task itself, then I think it's more likable that students will perform like this, that they really, yeah, put their heart in. The next task, or the next project that I would like to present to you, is a project that I did with a class. So, of course, when it comes to teaching, you can choose a book, a literature for the class to read, as many of you do, but you can also let the students choose which book they're most interested in. As I said before, the student is the expert. He knows best what he or she is motivated by. So what I did here is to send the students onto a little journey. I brought a huge box of different books that they can use, that they can choose from. So the students were asked to have a look at all those books that I provided. They could have a look at the book title. They could have write their own impressions to the book title and the cover. They could read the text, that, or the short summary, given an insight to the content of the book. They could write down their first impressions on the first page that they've read, and write down their overall conclusion, and then choose from 20, 25 books that they go through, choose the best 3 books, and finding their own book that they really would like to read. So what happened was that all 3 books that they write down, they choose their top 3 or their top 1 book, And then they start reading this book in order to present it later. But of course, it's not a teacher chosen book. It's something that they have chosen themselves. And in this way are more motivated. Um, and here in this task, they are also asked to reflect their own choice, reflect their own learning somehow. And this is also a way to help the students, to guide them, to ask them, okay, why did you choose that? Why did you make that decision? And to reflect on their own learning. What happened after this book choice was something that is called Book Slam. And I will show you that this is again another example of how individualized teaching or individualized learning can take place. So after choosing any of those books, the students were asked to think of how they are going to present what they have read about their book. Um, so they are asked, okay, do I like to read? Do I like to narrate about things? Do I like to act? Do I like music? Do I like to draw things? Do I like to think of my own text when it comes to a book? What other likes do I have? What am I good at? And they were asked to write that down in a worksheet on the left hand side, and then choosing, of course, the most yeah aspects of the book that they like most, and then in the end making a decision of what all the forms of presentation that they can choose from: reading from the book, creating a dialogue to the book, talking freely about the book, writing a song about the book, creating an interview to the book, writing a rep text or a commercial or a quiz or role play. They were asked to choose one of those presentation forms, but not randomly, but as you can see, asking them beforehand. So what are your interests? What are you good at? And on this basis, making a reflected decision. That's the book slam. The next project or the next example that I'm going to show you is opening up the individualization part a bit more. This project is based on a book that I was teaching with, The Lost Thing. It's a book graphic novel combination, very interesting, about an object going through a world that seems to be very remote and experience their own thing in this world. And after reading this book with the students, again, here we see an example of choosing the same book for all the students, but asking them to choose different tasks to do regarding this or related to this book. So what I did with those students is I gave them a bigger time frame, not only a task for an hour or for 2 lessons, but giving them a bigger time frame of 3 weeks, 3 school weeks, and ask them to choose whether to work on their own or in groups, making a reflected decision on that. They can choose, and they know whether they are working better if they work on their own or if they would rather work in groups. And ask them, or I gave them a whole list. You'll only see some parts of the list here. Ask them to choose at least 6 of the following tasks. So what they can do, if they feel motivated, if they see the task, they might think, okay, I do the 6 tasks and then I do more because I like the task so much and I would like to do those because this is a great opportunity. Or I might even have planned my learning so well that I have a lot of time because I planned my school week so well that I can do the 6 tasks in the first week, and then I have 2 more weeks to do more tasks to gain more knowledge in my foreign language or whatever there is. And the students were asked to choose subjects in those school weeks. So, for example, English, art, and one of the Dalton lesson. I will talk about the Dalton lesson a bit later. This is like a free working lesson that is not signed up for a certain subject, but the students can choose what kind of task they want to do in that part. And then, of course, they were not left alone only with the list of the task, but they were asked to think about learning in this project even more by asking them to write down what they need, to plan the learning in this part, to bring all the material, and to hand all the material in later. So this is the project sheet with all the tasks given, and the other worksheet that they got is this. This is like a planning, yeah, a lesson plan, or I would say a learning plan that asked them to write down which of the task of the list would they like to choose this week? Is it one task? Is it two? Is it three? What do they think they can fulfill? And what do they need? What material do they have to bring for this task? At the end, what kind of homework do they give themselves? Because they couldn't finish it in the lesson, or maybe they want to do some research onto something else, but they choose what task they would like to give themselves when they go home. Also keeping in mind what kind of possibilities they have in school. Do they have access to computer in school only, and at home they might have difficulties with that? So having them not spoon fed with the material, with the task, with all the processes in learning, but taking them into this process and letting them think about all those kinds of aspects of learning and making them experts in this way. And after this has been done, all this reflection has been done for 1 week, for one learning week, of course, we asked them to think or to look back on how the week has gone. So, how did it work out? Was the plan fulfilled? Were the tasks done? Um, what is the conclusion looking back at the learning in this week? Was there something that the student might have realized? Was it too, was he or she too slow? Was there something not well organized? Something that was disturbing? Was there a decision in learning that should have been made differently? And what are the conclusions for the next week? What are the adjustments that this students would like to make for the next learning period? So in this way, you can see this is a very complex thing that you can give um, all kinds of students, but of course you need to have them guided through. You need to give them the aspects that they have to think about. The first plan like this should be filled in with the help of the teacher and together with all the students, letting them ask all kinds of questions that they have. And of course the teacher is always in the room helping them, but more like a language helper, like a learning helper, rather than giving the input, making decisions for the students themselves. And what I showed you now are some examples of a modern learning arrangement that I've experienced in my school in Berlin, which does not only look at the tasks that are individualized or opened in this way, but what you can see on the right hand side is a plan of a week, like a weekly plan, and next to the subjects that are fixed, you can find the Dalton Lessons. This is a concept from the US. By Helen Parkhurst, and she created this together learning arrangement. And we, as a school in Berlin, we thought, okay, our students are so diverse in their learning. We have to create a modern learning arrangement like this to pay justice to that. So in those Dalton lessons that you can see here, the students do not only decide what kind of content they would like to write about, or what kind of format they would like to choose, how they construct their project work. But in this very, very open modern learning arrangement, the students choose what subject they will start their Monday morning with, for example, the first Dalton lesson. So they can choose whether they want to start with maths, if they want to follow up with English, German, French, whatever there is. But they can also choose what room they would like to learn in, with which of their peer group they would like to learn in, and take responsibility this way for their own learning. And on the left hand side, you see a plan that shows. Or a planner that shows how these students can actually plan, write down, okay, the subject and the room, and then the teacher in the room only gives their short teacher signature, or like a stamp into the book to prove that the student has been there. And everything else is, because the learning is so individualized, so individual, taking the students into this learning process, making them the expert, asking them to make choices for themselves, is working out quite well. So these are only some examples of how individualized learning can be made, from opening task very slightly to making it, or to open it up bigger and bigger, not only on the task base, on the lesson structure, but also on the whole, how school arrangements, how learning arrangements in a school can be made to engage, or to enable students to learn this way. So the conclusion is that individualized learning is not the or the difference is not what the students learn. So they might all learn, they might all talk about the same book that they read in class. They might all talk about the same grammar phenomenon. They might all learn the same structure, how to structure a love letter, for example, a very formalized text, but it's the way how they learn and what skills they acquire by making those decisions for themselves. And individualized learning encourages and demands independent thinking, because they are asked to do those, to make those decisions. And in this way, it spurs each child on, so that he or she is neither overtaxed nor under-challenged. And if this happens, of course, they are always asked to reflect on that, and to adjust these little tiny pieces, so that their learning will improve for the next time. So I hope this was, not too long or not too short insight of how individualized learning can look like, and what the idea is behind it. And terima kasih and dankeschön. Thank you for listening. And I would like to answer your questions now.
Thank you very much, Danila. It was a very good sharing, and I liked quite a number of things which you shared with us, especially that there's no child who should be left behind, especially when during this time of pandemic. So
Yeah,
what you were telling, it is something very, very interesting. And I am happy that we are language teachers, so we don't abide by any kind of rigid syllabus. The only thing
yes,
which we look at or we have to abide is make sure that our students get the four language skills which we have,
exactly,
and
exactly.
also their grammar and those kind of things. So we are lucky to be language teachers. All right. And another thing which I like to bring about is, especially when individualizing this kind of teaching, we also look at, like what you said, the differentiated learning. Either we look at the process or the product. Okay, like
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
process, we go according to our students, and the product, they decide on what they want to achieve. Okay, and
Yes.
like what you have said, that we can also incorporate with other other subjects, For example, like what you did on your letter writing about my love letter. Okay, that is also interesting, where I think somehow the aesthetic values can come in. Okay, there are a lot of things we can incorporate. It is really, really wonderful. Okay, it is actually on how we teachers, or how we go about setting the pace. Right.
Exactly.
Okay. There is a few questions. There are a few questions for you. The first
Mhm.
one, I think we will take from Mr. Muhammad Sabri bin Mahmoud. Okay, what he asked is, now that we are going online, okay, everything is online, what is the common problem that you have encountered in online classes? Maybe you have done some online classes, so what are the common problems which you have encountered? Would you like to share?
Mhm. I haven't done online classes myself, but of course, working together with the 80 secondary school teachers that are teaching German in Malaysia, I've
Mm-hmm.
seen, or I've seen it in Berlin as well, that the access to internet for the students is a very challenging thing. Um, and I think this is very hard to include all the learners into the process without any internet connection, without access to the IT equipment that they need. So, for example, there are families that share one smartphone or one tablet, and how can a family of five, how can they all follow up on the online classes if they don't have the chance to do that? So I think this is a really tough thing to do. I think I think the teachers here in Malaysia, especially, have done a wonderful job adjusting to this situation, the change that has come to them in all other areas as well. But of course, getting this expertise from one day to the other, trying their best to create online classes, to get the language learning into this online classroom, finding new formats. I think I saw that there's a lot of new and very creative ideas how to keep the online teaching going, especially when it comes to language, which is not easy.
Yes, that is very true. So it is a lot of sacrifice, a lot of thinking, a lot of ideas to put in. It's kind of a difficult situation, because the teachers have to think a lot, and to ensure that all students are given whatever they are supposed to get. Okay,
Yes.
that is good. Okay, the next question is from Muhammad Wasim. Okay, this is particularly, he is asking for English, but as a
Mhm.
language educator or a language expert, I think we should be able to answer. Okay,
Mhm.
he is asking for, do you have any advice for parents to help their children to learn? Here he's asking for English language specifically, but then I think it can be across for all languages. So
Of
how?
course. How to do that in the year 2021? I think for English learning, it's very easy because you have access to so many sources. I would advise the parents to come together with the child to think about what this child is interested in. It might be a certain anime, it might be a certain series that can be watched in the original, it might be a certain book that can be ordered, a language book with annotations, for example. It can be a certain project that the kid can be signed in. There's a lot of language activity going on in Malaysia. And I think it all, like I said, it all depends on the child itself. Interacting with the child, asking what the need is, what the interest is, and then making a decision on that basis. And I think there's a lot when it comes to movies and music. The access is unlimited with the internet. But of course, it's about not giving just any task to the kid, but finding what is interesting.
Yes, that is very true. Like my personal experience of being a language teacher, I think the most important thing is the vocabulary. Okay,
Mm,
at the
yeah,
moment they have the vocabulary, then I think they have conquered half the task. Me personally, like my Tamil is not so good, but I started learning, or I started getting used to the vocabulary first. Okay, how do
Mm.
I get the vocabulary? I just listen to some songs. Say
Exactly,
from
because
there you pick, yeah,
yeah. The new words have to be given or have to be learned in a relevant context. Yeah, it can be a
true,
movie,
true,
can be a song, and then they will be remembered. But it has to mean something to the kid. If it's just
yeah,
a series that the parents choose, they might not be interested, and the words just
true,
disappear. But if
yes.
this series, if this movie, if this song is relevant to you, then the words will stick. The new vocab will stick.
So I think the parents can introduce the children to some kind of animated movies or songs or something. Let them sing aloud. Let them just say the words. Okay, I think they should be able to get it. Okay,
Hmm.
then we do have another question from Elmi Azri. What he says is, when students do projects, okay, do they like in your examples, do they just take from one subject, or do they have from other subject? For example, do they take from science experiment and then they do it on English presentation?
It can be a mix. Yeah, it depends on how open this learning arrangement is.
Mm-hmm.
So in some yeah arrangements, it could be that it's only one subject. But of course, the last example that I've shown is shows a whole school week. So the students can choose from a variety of subjects that they can work on, and there might be even some interfering tasks. So, for example, the physics teacher can work together with the English language teacher, and they can think of asking the students to create a little movie trailer for a product, physics product that they come up with, or whatever there is, what kind of task that they can give. And in this way, there's no limit to how to combine the subjects also for those tasks. They can stand on their own, being worked on individually, but also to be combined. Mhm.
Yes. Okay, that's good. Okay, there's another question. Okay, this is very interesting. This is from Olivia. She's asking, how do we assess the students if the learning is individualized? How do we go about the assessment?
That's a very, very interesting and very complicated task or question. Of course, if the assessments, if the exam papers are all the same things, if yeah, if the same task is given to the same students, again, this is going back to a very old-fashioned way of teaching. But still, I think it's important for the way that for the process beforehand, even if the assessment is not individualized, maybe the process or the process beforehand can be, and how to mark or how to assess those individualized products. It can be, for example, that you only have a look at how has the student approached the topic that was talked about. How well was he or she prepared for the presentation of the book? How is the performance in the book slam? Even though there might be a totally different range of the format that they have chosen, but I think if you're open to the assessment, also if you find criteria to be given to all of them, of course the presentation formats or all the variety can still be marked in a possible way.
All right. I would just like to add a little of my experience in
Hmm.
doing assessment. Okay,
Mm.
in our context, in our schools, is we look at the can-do statements which we have in our CEFR. Okay, so since in Malaysia we go on with CEFR, so we look at the can-do statements and we gauge the students based on that, whether they are able to do certain tasks which we give them. Because when we give them, obviously we have our objectives to achieve by the end of the day, the success criteria we have.
Mm.
So we will normally gauge them with that, and that is how I think it's the easiest way to assess whether they have achieved or they have
Yeah,
not achieved.
yeah, yeah.
That will be the best thing to do.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
thank you. Okay, and then there is another question by Benedicto. he said is what he's saying is, how will you handle a class from a remote place considering their ability in using the gadgets and the internet connection? Okay, are we going to give them the same thing, or we are going to help them, and how are we going to help them without they being left behind?
Hmm.
Any idea on this?
That's a very difficult task, and I wish I would give you the perfect answer to that.
Yes,
I
yes.
think we should try to find a way to reach out to all those students, find a way to make them learn, to give them, for example, those plans that you've seen. Those plans could be sent via WhatsApp, even though the students might not be able to follow the video conference, but they might be able to see, access a list of tasks that they can choose from and learn individual on their own, and find a way to interact, to contact the teacher, even though it might be an unstable internet connection. I think there are many ways to find a good way to, even in those difficult times, to help the students, and maybe find a routine of letting them feedback how they cope with the situation, if they have problems, if they have, yeah, questions about certain things. So I think if you find a way, opportunities to still interact with the students, nobody will be left behind, because you can always reflect on what's the reason for those difficulties. Is it the internet connection? Are there any ways to go around this? Is there the possibility of access to books? Is there a possibility that students in the same kampung can share their material, can meet up for knowledge exchange, working together in a group? There are many ways how to approach that. Yeah, I hope.
Yeah, actually, it's the extra step that we have to take, and those kind of things, which is quite difficult, especially in Malaysia when we have a large group in the class. Okay, we
Yeah.
have like 25 to 30. Sometimes it goes to 45, 50. So we have to consider all the children. Okay, there
Yeah.
is one question here, one more question here. How can we encourage students to be more participative in this individualized learning, especially now online classes? Everybody seem to be asking you more on online classes
Online
now.
class, because that's the topic right now. I totally understand,
Yes.
because that's what matters. I think it's the same answer. I think if you give a variety, a range of tasks for them to choose from, especially when it comes to online classes, if it's something that they can hand in a little video snippet that they can record. So, for example, you can ask them to report on a specific issue in the foreign language, and let them hand in certain formats, an audio file or a little video, an advertisement, a TikTok video that they create. So something that they can choose from, something that they might be surrounded by every day. I think there's always the possibility of getting them interacted. But of
Yeah.
course, give teaching online classes and only give them input all through the day might is tiring, for not only for the students but also for us adults. And I think there must be a change. And if you ask them, if you get them into the process again here to choose from something that they are interested in, that they do, I think that's the most yeah, or the best approach.
Okay, there's this opinion given by one of our participants. They have been watching it, and it's very good. I like this very much. What he says is, if the child does not learn the way you teach, then teach the child the way the child wants to learn. Okay,
Very
that
good.
is what I think it is,
Yeah.
individualizing learning, and
Yes.
that is very good. So we have to identify the children. And
Yes.
there's another one which says that, okay, he is giving some ideas on, he or she, I'm sorry, it's giving some ideas on how to improve a vocabulary and pronunciation. Say watching CNN
Mhm.
and BBC is very helpful. I think yes, that is very helpful, and it will help us in improving our vocabulary and also pronunciation. Like most of my students who are teacher trainees now, I mean, they are student teachers. That's what I tell them: watch the news. Okay, that will give you some kind of idea on what is happening around you, and also it
Mhm.
will help you encourage, help you learn the language. So that is very good. Okay,
Any
and
kind of
with that,
authentic language input, I think, is important. Any kind of
yes,
authentic language modeling that the students can use. Mhm.
yes, that is very good. And also project-based learning. Okay, there's a comment which says that project-based learning is something which we should encourage. Yes, I think we
Yes.
should. And I think now with students with all the gadgets and all the applications they have, they kind of can come up with very good ideas online. They can,
Yes.
I feel that they are good at it. Okay, that is one. And there is one last question. I think we will take a last question.
Mhm.
That's very different and very interesting. Uh, it's from Kok Fung Moy. How to integrate culture in teaching the foreign language? What do you think about it?
I think if you give a project or a task, you can always give a certain input. And I think culture can be put into that. So, for example, creating a certain situation, describing a certain cultural phenomenon, and then asking the student to interact with it. So, for example, imagine you are in Berlin and you're lost in the street, and your task is to find a good way to get to the nearest hostel. Write your own dialogue, or yeah, whatever. And then the teacher can give some cultural input that the students have to be aware of. And I think this is a good combination of giving them little information snippets, but also letting them work around those cultural phenomenons. Finding creative ways, for example, they can, so you have to find a way to the nearest hostel, but you have to keep in mind that bus drivers in Berlin are always very grumpy. When you enter the bus, they will always be scolding you for whatever that comes up. And then they have to work their way around that. So I think there can always be a very creative way to combine those fields, not teaching it, not giving only input to the students. Okay, this is what Germany looks like, this is what Germans look like, but also combining it with the actual task.
Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, I think that is our last question. So I got to end the questions here. So with this, we conclude the webinar for today. And thank you, Danila, for helping us sharing. And it was a wonderful session. A lot of sharing had been done. And there are also questions where we can share the slides. It all depends if we are allowed to share the slides by the presenter. We
Mhm.
will share the slides with all of you at the end of our 18th session. Okay, because it is difficult for us to send individually. So we will compile all the slides and share after the 18th session. We will definitely share the slides, and also we will give you the playlist of all the videos which we have. Okay, thank you very much to all for attending. We hope you have learned and enjoyed this presentation. I would like to thank the Educational Technology Division, MOE, for the platform, our wonderful studio director, Encik Syarul Azhar Ali, the producer, Dr. Suras Kanagasabai, IPG KBA's own technical support, which we have Encik Muhammad Fitri Aziz bin Muhammad Alias, and to all our lovely rapporteurs from IPG KBA. Do enjoy our next webinar series on 24th September at 11:30 a.m., which is tomorrow. Okay, it will be at 11:30 and not at 11. Yeah, it will be at 11:30 a.m. tomorrow. Till then, goodbye from Malaysia. Stay safe and be happy. Thank you very much. Bye.